Okay, now this video here is going to be a little bit longer, and it'll involve a bit more thinking than actually playing. I'm going to talk a bit more about some pretty heavy theory, which I just want you to sort of try and get as much as you can of. None of it is really necessary. By that I mean you can play all the things here without understanding what it is that you're doing, but it's certainly not going to hurt, and it will help later on when you look at improvising and making up your own stuff to understand how it works. And you've made the commitment, you made the effort, you've paid the money, so here's an opportunity for you to learn some stuff that you may not get anywhere else and that will be relevant. But like I say, don't stress about it. You know? Don't expect necessarily that you're even going to get it all in one go. You might have to watch this video now and again in a couple of weeks and again in a few months. Right? Okay. That's that out the way. We're tuned to GDGB, sometimes called an open tuning. Now the reason for that is because all of those notes sound good together, they work. And they're all notes in a G major chord. Right? G chord. Let's have a look at how that works, shall we? The notes in a G scale sound like this. Right, so the first, second, open, second, third, fourth, fifth frets on both those two bottom strings. All these scales will be in your notes. That's a major scale. We can continue up the rest of the octave. The next octave is back down. Let's just look at one octave at a time for now because it's easier on your ear. There's your major scale. Each of these notes then we say is in the key of G. So that's the first note in the key of G, it's the G. A is the second note in the key of G. B, the third note in the key of G. All of those notes are in the key of G. If I take one of them, for example that note there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1 or 8, we'll call it 1. That one there, 7, if I take that note and play one fret below it instead, that note now is called a flat 7. You won't have the 7 and the flat 7 together because they just sound weird together, but I'm going to replace that 7th note with the flat 7th. Right? Correctly speaking, it's the minor 7th if you're talking classical theory, but let's just call it the flat 7. That's because that's what everyone else calls it. So now, what do we got? It sounds a lot different, doesn't it? Let's compare the two again. Whoops. That's your normal major scale. Okay, let's play a little melody with the major scale. Same thing with the 7th scale now with this one. That makes a big difference, doesn't it? It goes from being a little bit Mary Poppins to being a bit bluesy. So just by changing one note, we've got a whole new flavour in the scale, in the key, in the chord. Right? Just by changing to a 7th note. You might have seen a 7th chord written somewhere. That's what that 7th chord does. It takes the 7th note from the major scale and flattens it one, and so that you get that effect. If I were to play that 7th note there in a G chord, it would sound like this. Hear how that makes it go? Gives it that tension. Right, so there's your G7 chord. Let's have a look at another key. Let's have a look at the key of D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So we do exactly the same thing, we're just starting from a different place. All the notes are now in the key of D. Okay. Now all of those notes except for one is also in the key of G, right? That one there, for example, is the first note in the key of D, but it's the fifth note in the key of G. Alright? So some notes, most notes, all notes can be in more than one key. Right? There's G, here's D. Okay, they sound the same, just the D one has been shifted up. Let's do the same thing now. If that's the seventh note in the D scale, we take it back to there to play the flat 7, make it like a seventh chord. We've now got this. Okay, more of a bluesy sound. Now we said that that note there in D was the only note not in a G scale. But we've taken it away now and we've played that one instead, which is in the G scale. So all of the notes in D7 are also in G. All of the notes in D7 are also in G. I'm just starting from a different place. Okay? So if I make a chord from the notes in D7, that chord, that D7 chord, we'll get to this chord later, but for now just I want you to listen to it. This is the sound that it makes. It has that same bluesy sort of tense sound that we heard from the seventh chord before. If I play that and then play the G chord after it, it does that. That hopefully is a familiar sound to you, that makes sense. There's some tension there that then resolves back to the open chord. So in the same way we said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, D is the 5 note, this is the 5 chord. The reason that it does that is because this note here, which is the same as that one that we looked at before, remember was this flat 7th note from the D. That one, when it moves to a G chord, goes to there. You can hear the same resolution in that movement as you can when you do this. Yeah? So that note there is really important, that one there. The one that you moved and made it back to a G key. Because it does that. It also so happens, alright, let's summarise. We've got all these notes in one key, in the key of G. We can move them around to change the flavour. Make it a 7th chord. If I do that to a D, if I change that back to there, we now have this D7 flavour. That D7 flavour works with our G chord because it does that. All of these notes in D7 are all in the key of G. So we can do that, and the reason it works is because of that note specifically that moves like that. If we have a look at this one here as well, that's the 3rd note in E. 1, 2, 3. That 3rd note and the 7th note together are nasty, aren't they? It's called a tritone. You put the D on the bass and you have your D7 chord. Okay, now you could add the 5 note as well, but it's not absolutely necessary. Okay, there's your D7 chord. I want to examine this tritone some more. Alright? The tritone. We had a look before at a G chord, and we said we can add that note to it there, and that one, and it becomes a G7. That note there is the 7th note in G, that note is the 3rd note in G. So those two notes are the 7 and the 3, there's your G chord. If I move that little shape up there to there, I've got the tritone in D. There's the 7, there's the 3. So they're only one semitone apart. Right? The maths are in your notes. We don't need to analyse it to that degree right now. Right? But we've got this cool thing going on where that is a G chord and that is a D chord, and we can move to there. If we put the bass on, it sounds even more obvious, right? Now if that's a D, we go back 2 frets, that's a C, because C is the one before D. So that's a C, that's a D. That's how it works. That's a D, that's a C, that's a D, that's a C. So now we've got a G chord and a C chord and a D chord. We can play a blues with those, and we will. That's what your song lesson for this lesson is going to be all about, is playing a blues with these tritones. Okay, so we have a G here on the 3rd and 4th fret, and we have a D there and a C there. Now you can play these tritones in other positions as well, and we'll look at that in the notes, and anywhere later on in the course where we look at playing blues and tritones, we'll point those out. But that's what we got. Now I can play that 7th note there in G, an octave high, and it'll be there. They're the same note, an octave apart. So that is also a tritone for G. Therefore, we take it up, that must be D. That must be C. There's G. You can hear it's doing the same thing, can't you? Okay, play that yourself if you don't believe me. Here it is here again. So just with those 2 little notes, you can suggest a lot of harmony, a lot of big sounds in that because of this tritone. That's why I carried on so much before about scales and the rest of it, so you can understand that that's the 7th note, that's the 3rd note, and together they do something really important. Yeah? There's the tritone in D, in C, and in G. When we go to look at our blues in a minute, we're going to run through a blues with that and add some other notes on top as well. Okay, so practice for now moving these little shapes backwards and forwards, that one and that one, and picking down with your pick like you just did in the picking exercise. Easy. See you soon.